Welcome to Season 5 of the Prodcast, Google's podcast about site reliability engineering and production software. This season, we are continuing our theme of friends and trends. It's all about what's coming up in the SRE space, from new technology to modernizing processes. And of course, the most important part is the friends we made along the way. So happy listening, and may all your incidents be novel.
You missed a page from Telebot.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Prodcast, Google's podcast on SRE and production software. I'm Steve McGee again, and also again we have Matt. How's it going, Matt? How are you?
Hey there, Steve. Glad to be back.
Excellent. I think we have a guest today too, don't we? Probably.
We do.
We tend to. Yes.
Right here.
Guest, would you please introduce yourself? Who are you exactly?
Sure. My name is Denia del Cid, and I am an SRE at Google. I've been in that company for about 9.5 years now, and an SRE for the large majority of it, like 7 years, 8 years.
How'd you get hired? Were you hired not to SRE and then you moved into SRE?
Yeah, no, I actually started as an intern. I started as an intern working in support.
Uh-huh.
If you are a Googler or were a Googler, I used to work at TechStop.
Nice. Classic.
And then I did a rotational program that allowed me to travel around the world and then rotate with teams. And through that one of those rotations, that's how I discovered what SRE was. And I loved it. And then here I am, like a bunch of years later.
We don't need to count years. That no one feels good about that. That's very cool. I've actually heard a lot of folks come through either TechStop or like kind of corporate IT. Like that tends to be a pretty, I don't know if it's common, but like I've heard it a fair amount of like.
Yeah, the route through operations into SRE makes total sense to me. Like getting your hands on things, then using that on the things to support the systems. That makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah, back in my day, it was not as common, but I think you see a lot more of that, which is great. I think there's a lot of overlap for sure.
Are you implying that I'm some sort of old person that's been around for too long? Like, because that's exactly accurate.
No, it's opposite.
Okay. So I'm guessing that you're no longer in TechStop. What is it that you're doing these days? So what SRE flavor do you practice?
So nowadays, I am essentially doing AI for SRE.
Cool.
So, which is very, very cool, very exciting. Definitely fresh field. I've only been doing this for the last 1.5 years, like shortly after the inception of my new team.
But like, to be honest, like 1.5 years of AI for anything is like the half-life of all of it. AI at all anyway. So like that's pretty good. Yeah. It's a fast moving world. Like
it changes so much. It does. Like when we started Gemini 1 and 1.5 we're still a thing, and now we're all the way to 3. So we're definitely seeing the evolutions and the models changing along the way.
For sure. That's cool.
That makes me think about SRE being cautious about adopting newer infrastructure into its folds because it's so focused on repeatability, reliability, and wanting to ensure the best for its services. Can you speak a little bit about that in AI and how taking that into it, being cautious and thoughtful about it, that says something interesting about that for SRE to say, okay, yep, we're going to do some AI. How did we do that?
Yeah, so back in the good old days of 2 years ago, there was definitely a lot more hesitation. Like it wasn't too clear what the path of or the applications of using AI in SRE workflows would look like. And that's where my team was a pioneer in this field, where we, like our org got funding for this exploratory project that is Data Cloud Platform, the team that I'm on, to explore ways in which we could apply AI and then how reliable and applicable in terms of accuracy and to the field, whether it's to diagnosis or planning, how applicable AI could be. And then now we're 1.5 years later since the design and the experiments and the running the services, and we've been seeing a lot of progress in terms of accuracy, a lot of interest in adoption, but it's definitely been a journey. I'd say what we've tried to focus on more is on making tools that surface information first, and then as you learn to trust your tool or to tune your prompts to the LLMs to get results that are specific to your team and that are high in accuracy, high being how a human in their own subjective experience would apply certain tags or would perform certain analysis, try to match that as closely as we can. That's where we're taking the journey. And then eventually, just recently, we've been starting to explore, okay, so now how can we automate some of these workflows? Maybe not fully 100% touching production, but definitely like being that sort of companion to an SRE.
Cool. Can you like remember a moment where either you or someone that you heard about, or like maybe this is just an experience or a story, where it went from like, this seems maybe interesting to like, oh, we should do this. Like this turned a corner. Like, do you remember any moment? Like, what was the thing that it's like, oh, it can X, whereas before we were like, I wonder if it can X. You know?
We've had a couple of those. So, for instance, one of the most interesting ones where we have all of these support cases and escalations that customers like mention, and then sometimes it takes a couple of days for an incident like an SRE to take a look at it, maybe because like our alerting system was not aware fully of that niche case that the user was experiencing. Maybe we were monitoring it at the time. So that started as a very bare bones proof of concept. And then it started to be very interesting. Like we've detected a couple of outages, some that regular traditional automation detected, but some of them that were detected before in this method. Another example is for leads and across SRE, a common task that they have is analyzing all of their team's ticket queues and trying to find trends along those, like what was the most common root causes for them, what were the solutions, what proportion of the entire queue belong to a particular incident. Is there anything that we can automate and prioritize work because we're seeing high volume or because our team is dedicating too many human resources in troubleshooting these results? So we've been able to create tooling that analyzes all of that in like a matter of a couple minutes, a task that could easily take some teams like weeks. And then it just creates dynamic dashboards for them.
Do you think it was a matter of the technologies themselves that you're building these on like maturing, or was it that the team had to figure out which problems were solvable, or like, you know, it was a matter of like writing the, you know, the agents or whatever, like within your team? Like, was it a practice thing, or was it okay, we're ready, like now it'll work, like launch?
So it was more of a hearing your customer kind of scenario.
Yeah.
Our team is a horizontal across all of Data Cloud, which includes like databases, data analytics, across Google, which is a few teams just because of the scale of Google. It's like tens of teams. So we sat down with all of them. A few people from our team came from those teams, so they already had like knowledge about the common problems that they would have. And based out of both their experiences and talking to the leads across these teams is when we started seeing patterns in trends or in workflows. Like, oh, your director every month is going to ask a report on what was the progress on X type of toil. And it was a manual task to have engineers. Some teams, they would even dedicate a full-time engineer. I give them a KR for the entire quarter to like manually tag all of their bugs and then generate this analysis. So that's where we saw the opportunity of freeing up the time of an SRE as much as we could so that they could actually do the planning work, the design coding work that's like one of the biggest values of an SRE, instead of having to read through all bugs and ensure they would tag properly or manually tag them themselves.
This is really striking a chord with me, just thinking automation, like automation. This is our business model since day one. SREs try to automate themselves out of their own work. Mm-hmm. But usually with automation, when you go to your customer with an automation objective, they look at you a little funny, like, whoa, I kind of want you to be looking at this manually before you hand it to the machine to automate, or it deserves your personal attention, right? So let's think a bit about not only automating, you're now like adding intelligent automation to it. So there must be occasionally some resistance or a little bit of skepticism. How do you manage some of that, and how to push through that, or maybe even back off from some of those things? And were there some pitfalls? Was there a negotiation through that process?
Yeah. Well, we do not force our users to adopt us
No.
at all. So if anything, what you're mentioning is exactly what we noticed at the beginning stages, like during our consultation phases. So what we did is take notes. So we built the tool to be dynamic. So when people say, these are the tags that are specific to me, and this is how my humans tag them, and we're like, this is great, to give me your list. And we're going to make sure that when we analyze all of the bugs in your components, all of the tickets from your customer support cases, we're going to use your tags. So this is where AI, like your LLMs, are phenomenal, because we embed all of those custom tags that they have as part of the instruction. The tricky part then comes with validation, because sometimes what is obvious to like a 10-year engineer in a team and like common terminology for them might not be as relevant to the LLM. So especially in the very first cases after adoption, we notice people are dissatisfied with the results because they might not be accurate enough. So usually that takes a couple of rounds of prompt tuning, making sure that we clarify terminology or clarify different scenarios when a tag should be applied and when it shouldn't. So the LLM learns. And then we do validation. So for that, I do not trust this tool. Usually teams tend to have like what we call our golden data sets, which is back in the day when they were still tagging things manually. We compare the results that the LLM handles against their manual results for the exact same bugs. And that's how we measure how accurate our labeling is against their tags. So
yeah, that's really important. Like, that's awesome that you had that, because without that, it would be much harder, I have a feeling.
Yeah.
On the same vein, like backing up a second, you're on a team that is, like you said, it was horizontal. It's kind of developing these tools or systems that are like solving problems for neighboring teams, right? Is that about right? Based on your interviews, and you're making the solutions kind of match what they're used to. And so it's a little bit more, I don't know, feels a little like white glove, which is nice. Like, it's not just like, go use this thing you've never heard of. It's like, it sounds like it's pleasant, which is great. So once you have like these solutions in place and like you're getting your like client teams to use them, how do you judge if it's working? Like, what are the metrics for success that you, as this tools developing team, like, how do you know it's working? Like, how do you know you're successful? Do you get points or something? Or like, is there, I don't know. I'm just curious.
So it depends on the tool. So we have 3 main products for now. One of them is like the early outage detection that I was mentioning, thanks to looking at support cases. The other is toil analysis. And then the latter is similarity. So the way that you gauge success really depends. So for early outage detection, if you detected the outage before the team did, that is success to us.
So you being like, if the tool detects it before like the human
before the automation
gets paged or something, or
yes, before a traditional SRE alerting configuration would detect that as an OMG as an incident.
Tasty.
It's a race.
Then that's how we qualify success in that regard. Then for the second is adoption of our dashboard in their regular workflows. So when teams tell us, oh, we loved your tool, we're now using it for planning, or we use it every week to analyze the trends of toil in like our production reviews. That would be the second. And then for similarity is satisfaction with the result. So we surface how similar a given incident might be to past incidents. So when those are high in accuracy, where teams give us feedback, or when like an individual gives feedback that it was successful.
That's cool. Are you able to then roll those like learnings back into the system to make it more accurate, more faster? Like,
yeah,
I presume that's a goal. Like, but does it work? Like, can you actually do that?
Well, we're actually working on that right now.
Oh,
we're working
nailed it.
on
All right.
on our pipelines. Yes.
Okay, that's very cool.
Yeah, I was curious how this talk about toil reduction, like you're now getting some early signals, giving people things to look at specifically earlier than just hunting around their usual dashboards, which I'm sure they've cultivated carefully on their own. But now they might have some early signals that are actually maybe a little bit more specific to what's actually going on. Are you measuring toil reduction, and how's that going?
Well, each team measures toil reduction independently, and they have different targets. Our team, ourselves, we have relatively little toil just because our services are so new. But from their end, they usually come with toil reduction targets. Like they have specific queues that have high volume of tickets. So most of the time they want to reduce the volume of the incoming tickets. Other times they just want to get better understanding of their tickets just because they are poorly documented. And we do some context retrieval as well, where if a bug it's related to a different ticket or to an OMG or to a postmortem, then we retrieve those contents to improve the tagging, which is similar to when a human would go in, read through a bug, try to figure out what happened and label it. So I think for us, we mostly set the general direction for the team, like the dashboards that we create. It's supposed to give them like a bird's eye view of what their toil look like on any given period of time. Like it could be over the last year, over the last quarter, last month, last week, and we leave it up to them on what they want to prioritize. We just surface the clusters that tend to be the most popular, just purely based on their own tickets, what were the most common root causes for the issues, and what were the most common fixes. The other interesting area is the ones that were the root cause is not known, that they might have auto-resolved. Like, why are you getting all of these tickets that ended up just being automatically closed or labeled as obsolete?
Are you finding those to be fairly uniform objectives across your customers? They're all kind of targeting towards the same burn downs. They want to close tickets faster. No, you're shaking your head.
No, everyone seems to have, they do have the goal of, we want to reduce our toil, but the how you reduce your toil or where in their journey they are to better understand their toil, it's all over the place. Some teams might have a better picture of their toil just because they dedicate so many resources to tagging and monitor that through time. And other teams are just starting to do that because now they're like, oh, we have AI that can do this automatically for us. That is so cool. Before we're just like overloaded with all of these alerts. We can barely stay over water and they just feel like they're drowning. So it's this is starting to provide them with better insights, and it's taking them through the journey of, should we remove alerts? Should we split some of them or tier the alerts in how they get triggered? And others are going through a journey of, we should be documenting our tickets better.
Yeah, teams go through these life cycles, and I would imagine that not everyone is going to use the system that you guys are building in the same way at the same time. Mm-hmm. It depends on context. It turns out context is important.
Context.
Who knew?
Context is very important, yes.
Speaking of context, how do you think that this process that you're talking about, if you could magically transport it to be outside of Google, to be out in the world that doesn't have a Borg, but instead has, several clouds and Terraform and Kubernetes and words like that, mm-hmm. Does it still work? At the highest level, at the abstract level, you could say you transform it all to be, working with whatever else is out there. Is this a transferable concept?
The concept itself, yes. But our current tooling, I don't think it's mature enough to be widely deployed. However, the concept itself, as long as the team that wants to deploy it has a relatively centralized or just a handful of data sources to pull from. So we're not looking, for example, specific board jobs and how they behave now. We're looking at what was reported in your tracking ticket after the alert fired. So if those systems are it's just one, that's ideal, because then your integration is very easy.
Sure.
At Google, we do not have that. We report OMGs in one places, tickets in another, customer cases in another system. So it's just a matter of whole
I think that's pretty common. I think a lot of teams are like that. But like, are you saying that like the data that you're ingesting to do this analysis is like, it's almost like second party data? Like it's like maybe it was originally meant for humans to look at, and you're ingesting it with an LLM. So it's the type of data where you're not like querying an API and getting like all the metadata from all the things, but it's more like, read the ticket that we have chosen not to read because they're super boring, or there's too many of them, or something like that.
Yes, that is correct. Like there are efforts within Google. I believe that you had Ramon and they talked about the production agent, and then agents like that are designed to be more to analyze like one ticket at a time. Like you're looking at an OMG and you're trying to analyze it and see what the current metrics or the current jobs that are running. I think that type of integration with your job management services, that's more tailored to that. What we are doing a lot more is like that post-fact analysis. Like, so you resolved your bug. What went wrong? How did you fix it? And then for teams that are interested in also analyzing like their incoming still open bugs, we also do that. We just do not surface details like what resolved it because it's still open, but at least we can highlight, oh, this was similar to these past bugs that you had.
Gotcha. Cool.
Yeah.
But something fascinating about your input material is just language. It's just talking.
Mm-hmm.
It's humans, meant for humans, although sometimes stultifyingly boring content for humans so much that they don't actually read them. But that's the deal. It's like, here's a bunch of business data. Oof. But, the LM's like has the patience of a saint. So it's just going to read them all and then learn things. And what I imagine there's some pretty surprising insights that come from it reading all your things. And you're like, wow, you really figured that out. And wow, that's really interesting. So what are some surprising things that you've noticed that it can discover from reading all the human things that have been written about all the things? And it comes up with sort of magic, surprisingly so. I imagine you have some anecdotes you could share, at least one or two.
Unfortunately, I don't have as much as you would think because their tagging is so discreet. Like I mentioned how teams can bring in their own labels, and then we apply labels from even on the default case, so that people are like, oh, just take my bugs. I just want to use it. Like I'll take whatever tags you have. They are still like a very discrete set of tags. And then for privacy reasons, we do not store the contents of the original data sources in our tables. So we only get to see details of it was this bug and these were the tags that were applied because of so-and-so thing. So we have to go back to the teams with, okay, these were the results. Do you have a golden data set? Let me compare. And in the cases where they don't, then you just learn about teams configurations. I think that's probably like from a personal level, what I've learned the most is like, oh, so PubSub tends to have like these two different queues. That is interesting. And they like some of them, they tend to have this type of issues, whereas this other one doesn't tend to have like that type of problem. Or in the context of, say, Cloud PubSub, then these labels are applicable, but these ones aren't. So it's more nuanced like that, rather than getting the deets or the juice from what's happening in the systems.
Okay.
Get much of that. Yeah.
Well, so it sounds like your team is kind of attacking, a pretty significant slice of like the problem space that is SRE work. So I'm curious, like, let's presume like that continues, or like you finished. I know you can't finish, but like presume like that gets like significantly improved. What would be next? So like a bunch of people have thought about this, and like there's a bunch of things you could possibly work on as an SRE, or have help from an AI or an LLM as an SRE. So there's like just like writing code. There's like dealing with incidents directly. There's root cause analysis of, like, I guess that's part of dealing with incidents, is like actually fundamentally looking at what's going on. And then there's like, design of new systems. There's all sorts of things you could go to. Like, where would you go next if you wanted to do that? Like, what do you think is the most either interesting or maybe the most fruitful and impactful? Where would you say would be like a good growth area to kind of continue this type of work?
It is interesting because I think right now, the horizontal view, like if I was in a regular team and I would be thinking of, oh, I wonder how I can automate the toil of, or reduce the toil, some tasks in my team. I would then want to evangelize it and make it a horizontal effort. So our current goal is to help reduce the toil across SRE at Google. So I think the next stage where you can take that, because part of what we do is not just surfacing the information, but we're starting to get into a space of deploying agents that rely on our information. Because then you currently have teams that may ask, oh, this dashboard is amazing, but I want to understand why during this week we had like so many incidents of this type. Like, can you tell me a summary about that? So we usually, when we get questions like that, we have to go back, modify the dashboards or modify the prompt in some ways, which is maybe like an hour task top. But by bringing agents, they don't even have to come to us. They can go straight to the agent and ask that information. The agent, we can customize it with custom SQL queries, but the agent also can come up with ad hoc ones, display it to the user, run them on their behalf, and then help them come up with that analysis. So I think the next barrier after doing this would probably see or try to see if we could deploy something similar to that for our external customers. Like,
this sounds to me a lot like a business intelligence role, but it's for production,
Yep.
which is, I think, pretty cool.
Yeah.
It reminds me of a joke I saw recently where someone was wearing a shirt or a hat or something and said, like, as a kid, I always wanted to transform structured data into actionable business intelligence, which I think is pretty funny. Like, no one dreams about that, but it turns out it's actually pretty important. But now you're doing it in a more automated way, specifically about production, which is pretty cool, I think, Cool. Well, thank you very much. This has been great. Is there anything that you want to make sure you get out there? Like, do you have a favorite, Strava route that you want to tell the world about, or like, is there a socials that you want to promote or anything like that? What do you want people to know?
I don't use my socials very much. I do have a LinkedIn.
That's totally fine.
Yes.
Okay.
To add me. But beyond that, I think, especially in a world where AI is starting to, like, everybody uses AI, from like kids, companies, and obviously in tech. I think the approach that we're starting to take with applying AI to SRE or ensuring that SRE is involved in the AI conversation is incredibly important, because it's a way to apply those guardrails that many people are scared of. A lot of people have hesitation with AI or distrust. And I think the strategies that I talked about today, it's a step on how you can help build that trust on your products, both for your customers, but also within your organization. At the end of the day, it's like a step forward to making AI more secure. And
yeah, I would say even people have distrust with just doing stuff to production. Like, it's hard to, like, am I doing the right thing? Like, should we try this thing? Like, having a way to give yourself a little bit more confidence in, like, this comes from data. Like, there's a reason for us to try this direction of travel. I think that is really helpful as well.
Thank you very much. You're describing a very measured, cautious, and really rational approach, which is really a breath of fresh air.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you, Denia. Have a good day. Have a good week. Have a good season, I guess. All right. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
My pleasure. See ya.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye.
You've been listening to the Prodcast, Google's podcast on site reliability engineering. Visit us on the web at sre.google, where you can find books, papers, workshops, videos, and more about SRE. This season is brought to you by our hosts, Jordan Greenberg, Steve McGee, Florian Rathgeber, and Matt Siegler, with contributions from many SREs behind the scenes. The Prodcast is produced by Paul Guglielmino and Salim Virji. The Prodcast theme is Telebot by Javi Beltran and Jordan Greenberg.